San Jose Sharks legend Joe Pavelski is calling it quits.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, probably part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow them wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And today, we're going to be discussing Joe Pavelski. I think anybody who's been a Sharks fan for longer than 5 minutes, beloved Joe Pavelski. And we're going to kind of discuss his career. We're going to look back at him leaving and kind of the circumstances behind, just kind of that sliding door moment in Sharks history. And then kind of talk about where he fits among kind of all-time great Sharks and maybe a future with San Jose. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Joe Pavelski, who said he is not planning on playing next year. So there's still, like, the door's open. There's a slight crack. You can, kind of peek through it. And maybe if he gets a chance, but I think it's fair to say and safe to say that we've probably seen Joe Pavelski play hockey for the last time. And Pavelski is, he's one of my all-time favorite players, right? I don't see how you can be a Sharks fan, honestly, and not a fan of Joe Pavelski. And even just being a hockey fan, everyone knows Joe Pavelski's story, right? 7th round pick, no expectations for him. Just that guy he was just a grinder, right? Immensely skilled, but one of those guys just was, I'm just going to work harder than anybody else. And one of the most illustrious American hockey careers that we've ever seen, right? I mean, you don't get the nickname Captain America for, no reason, right? And, looking back at Pavelski's career, right? So he finished altogether 1,332 games, 476 goals, 592 assists for a total 1,068 total points. Just missing 24 goals away from that elusive 500 goal club. Even with his time with the Sharks, right? 963 games. This is all regular season. 355 goals, 406 assists, 761 points with San Jose. And, even in his playoff performances, though, I think that's what a lot of Sharks fans point to when you talk about Joe Pavelski, and just those clutch moments with him. Played over 200 playoff games, 201 playoff games total, 74 goals, 69 assists, 143 total points. And with San Jose, 134 playoff games. That's like almost 2 full seasons of hockey right there. 48 goals, 52 assists, 100 points, and highlighted by that 2015-2016 season, where in 24 games he had 14 goals, 29 assists, 23 total points. Was an absolute just beast during that entire series or that entire playoff run there. And, just unfortunately, like many Sharks of this era, is going to go down as one of the greatest to just never win a cup, unfortunately. Right? There's a long line of Sharks players that are in that one of the greatest to never win a cup, headlined by Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, Joe Pavelski, Brent Burns, Mark-Edward Vlasic, Yeah, it sucks being a Sharks fan sometimes, but I think for anybody who watched him, and like for me, getting into Sharks hockey, and I've I've said it before. I was grew up a Flyers fan, and it wasn't until I moved to California that I really got into Sharks hockey. And after the lockout, that's when I really dove in. And right not long after that was Pavelski's rise. And one of my greatest kind of memories of watching Joe Pavelski is actually with my youngest or my oldest son now. My oldest son, who when he was 3, kind of during that playoff run, right? And kind of during Joe Pavelski's peak of him just running around, you know, saying Joe Pavelski, Joe Pavelski, Joe Pavelski anytime the Sharks scored a goal during that playoff run. And, he has like the little mini stick and he's wearing a diaper and he's just running around yelling Joe Pavelski, because he heard me yelling Joe Pavelski so many times. And even today, when I told him that Joe Pavelski was retiring, he got really sad, and because Joe Pavelski's been a big part of his life, and Joe Pavelski's been a big part of my life, and I'm sure Joe Pavelski's been a big part of your life. And there's so many just great moments of Joe Pavelski and what he meant to Sharks fans, right? You know about the leadership, and it's just that clutch factor. And I'll never the Winnipeg game. Kind of during that run where he scores that goal with, it was like 2 seconds left and just shuts down. Just that place was going crazy, and Joe Pavelski, as cool as the other side as of the pillow, scores a big goal, right? And Pavelski just kind of, it's great team effort, all that good stuff that Joe Pavelski does, but um, it's just we as hockey fans, especially as Sharks fans, got to witness just a career that kind of came out of nowhere, right? And there'll be plenty of discussion of where Joe Pavelski belongs in the greater scheme of things, right? And it'll be interesting, his Hall of Fame case, and we'll kind of discuss that a little bit here, I think. And actually, we kind of touch on it now with this Hall of Fame case, right? Doesn't have the 500 goals, and maybe doesn't have the hardware. He only made an all-star team kind of at the end of the year all-star team once, and that was that 2014 season. Was named to play in the NHL all-star game 4 times, in 16, 17, 19, and 22. It doesn't really have a lot of the hardware, but I don't know how you can tell the story of hockey without Joe Pavelski. And I think that's a big kind of qualifier for me with any Hall of Fame cases. Can you tell the story of this game without this person? If you can't, I think that's a pretty good distinction if you're a Hall of Fame type of player. And I believe Joe Pavelski will get in, maybe not a first ballot type of guy, but I think Pavelski gets in, especially kind of what he meant to USA hockey, and comparing his careers to other USA hockey players and or American-born players. I think Pavelski is right up there among some of the greatest careers, and just never got to lift the cup, which is unfortunate. But I'm gonna be really sad not to watch Pavelski do his things, and his ability to tip a puck from a mile out and still get it in. The net is a sight to behold, and him and Brent Burns and the way they made that work. That Brent Burns bombing shots and Pavelski just tipping them in like nobody's business, and watching those two practice and their craft. It's just it's as we get older, you guys like this who you grew up watching and rooting for and idolizing, and kind of seeing their careers come to an end, even though Joe Pavelski is like a year older than me. But it's just it's part of it, and we will have new guys come in and take their place. But I'm happy for Pavelski that he's getting to kind of go out while he's still, I don't think we want to see old Joe Pavelski kind of skating around there and not play up to his standards. And this playoff run wasn't a good playoff run for him, but this season he still was playing at a high level. And that's the crazy thing about it. We'll talk about a little bit more about that here in a second, but just how he played at a high level for so long, right until the end. So we'll get into kind of him leaving and what the circumstances behind that, and then we'll talk about his future and kind of where he fits in with the Sharks organization, if he fits in with the Sharks organization going long term. We'll get into all that here in just 1 minute. Winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So if you want to bet $5 on, if you're Vamos Gatos, if you're an oil man, if you think that Luka and the Mavs are going to be able to do this thing, or if you think the Boston Celtics finally break through, you win. You get $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right. Let's rewind to happier times when the Sharks playing meaningful playoff hockey, and those 2017, 2018, 2019 seasons where things were good in San Jose, and they were competing for a Stanley Cup that they unfortunately, of course, never won. But I wanted to kind of revisit Joe Pavelski when he left, and kind of go through that, because I know it's natural. A lot of Sharks fans, a huge percentage of Sharks fans, of course, they blame Erik Karlsson for him signing that massive contract and that kind of being the domino that pushes Joe Pavelski out to San Jose. There's a lot of factors that go into Pavelski leaving San Jose, right? And I think the one thing that we have to kind of remember the timeline of events here, right? And I think it kind of goes back to the year before when the Sharks acquired Evander Kane. So the Sharks acquired Evander Kane for a playoff run in the 2017-2018 season, his last season. He was with Buffalo at the time. Of course, he got traded from Winnipeg to Buffalo. Buffalo wanted to offload him. So the Sharks acquired him that season at the trade deadline that season. Of course, he came in, kind of made an immediate impact, right? If I recall correctly, had a pretty quiet playoff, but I believe he was pretty injured at that time as well. That offseason, the Sharks gave him, Evander Kane, a contract of 7 years at $7 million a pop, right? So Evander Kane at that time was 27, I believe, 20, kind of in that range of being 27, 28, right in that kind of peak of his window. So again, just kind of keep this in mind as we go through. So yeah, he signed a 7-year deal, May 24th, 2018. That was supposed to run through the 24-25 season. We all know what happened, of course, that the Sharks ended up terminating his contract in January 2020. He ended up going to Edmonton, where he signed a 1-year kind of little small deal, and then he's currently on a contract right now that pays him at a little over $5 million through the 25-26 season. So this would have he has 2 more years on his contract. If he had still was on his original contract, he would have been through the 24-25 season. So remember that. Evander Kane, $7 million a season. Okay. Just to remember our good friend, Timo Meier. So his ELC ran out the 2018-2019 season. where he was on, and then he, RFA, still needed a new contract. Right, you're not going to let a young Timo Meier, who is just coming into his own as well. And the Sharks end up signing Timo Meier to a 4-year kind of bridge deal at $6 million a piece. Of course, we know what happened to Timo Meier, traded to the New Jersey Devils, helped kind of with the current Sharks rebuild. But still, so Timo Meier needed a contract. Evander Kane needed a contract. And then, of course, the Erik Karlsson piece of this, right? So the Sharks acquire Erik Karlsson. So they trade for Erik Karlsson in the 2018-20, right before the 2018-2019 season, where he had 1 year left on his $6.5 million deal. So his contract expired at the end of the 2018-2019 season. So he needed a new contract. And of course, he signed a new contract on January 17th for 8 years at $11.5 million, which we know, well, if we had known at the time that COVID was going to happen, shut down the league, and then the cap would rise a whopping $1 million or $2 million over 4 years. And just horrible timing with that, right? Just horrible timing with that contract. And of course, Erik Karlsson no longer with the Sharks. We go back to Joe Pavelski. So Joe Pavelski finished up his contract with that he was on. That was a 4-year deal, 5-year deal, at $6 million a pop through his 2018-2019 season. Pavelski at the time was 34, 35 at that time, and was looking for a 3-year deal at $7 million. The Sharks just gave $7 million to a Evander Kane, who was much younger, looked to be kind of in the prime of his career, while Joe Pavelski coming off a great year. And Joe Pavelski, during that last season with the Sharks, was great, as he's always been. Pulling up his numbers now. So in that age 34 season, Joe Pavelski in 75 games, 38 goals, 26 assists, 64 points. Just a ridiculous season that we've seen from him. Shot 20%, which wasn't really sustainable. But the Sharks bet on the younger players like Erik Karlsson, Timo Meier, and Evander Kane, and they let him go because they only were willing to offer him a 2-year deal. Pavelski went on to have a pretty awesome career, 5 years with Dallas, right? He played 369 regular season games, 121 goals, 186 assists, 307 points total during that time. First year was a little slow, and I think if I recall correctly, he was dealing with an injury kind of the first year. Then he only had 31 points in 67 games, but 51 points in 56 games during the COVID season, 81 points in 82 games in the 21-22 season, 77 points in 82 games, and then last season, 67 points in 82 games. So the Sharks they bet wrong, right? And at the time, I thought it was smart to not give Pavelski that 3rd year. But hindsight being 2020, the Sharks should have just tried to keep Joe Pavelski in any way, shape, or form, because they would have been better off for it. But then there's always the sliding door moment. If they had kept him, do the Sharks ever really start their rebuild, or are they just kind of one of those teams that's stuck in the middle and but that's a conversation for another day. So because that team was aging and falling apart, and we saw what happened to Vlasic, and Joe Thornton was gone the next year, and Patrick Marleau was a shell of himself, and a lot of things kind of fell apart after Joe Pavelski left. And maybe he just saw the writing on the wall of this team is aging. He went to Dallas, which had a bit of an aging core, but also was able to retool on the fly. One of the few successful teams that have been able to do it. And, maybe he just saw the writing on the wall and thought, you know what, I'm not going to be able to win a cup here. I think I have a better chance to win a cup over here. And he got pretty close to winning a cup in Dallas. And just, again, unfortunately didn't happen with him. So, it's interesting to go back knowing what we know now and look back at it. But at the time, you can't fault Doug Wilson for betting on younger talent and not expecting Joe Pavelski to age like a fine wine. But Joe Pavelski aged like a fine wine. All that talent that he bet on, Carlson, Timo Meier, Evander Kane, none of them are here anymore. But we are reaping the benefits of some of those things, such as a really nice Shakir Mukhamadullin, Fabian Zetterlund, Quentin Musty, and then we got whoever the Sharks pick at 14. So, So if we didn't get Joe Pavelski, if we kept Joe Pavelski, we probably don't have those guys. But anyway, so we're going to talk about kind of where Pavelski fits in the grand scheme of Sharks players, kind of what, and maybe if Joe Pavelski could be the Sharks version of Rod Brind'Amour. So we'll discuss that here in a minute. All right. Joe Pavelski. Where does he fit in the all-time Sharks greats? And that's going to be a big question, especially because I'm sure fans are going to be clamoring or asking, does number 8 get retired? And I don't know, right? We've seen the Sharks be very stingy with the jersey retirements, finally doing it with Patrick Marleau. We know Joe Thornton's going to have his retired in the upcoming season. Does Pavelski get the same honor? And I'm not sure. Again, Pavelski played 13 seasons, absolutely deserving of being talked about among the Sharks greats. But I don't. It depends, right, on how the Sharks want to kind of play this. Because I think he's borderline of. You can make the argument of Pavelski's easily, Pavelski's one of the 5 greatest, at least forwards, who's ever played for the Sharks. Again, like you can't tell the story of, at least the story of the Sharks, without talking about Joe Pavelski. Do you retire his jersey? And maybe there's a compromise. Maybe it's a ring of honor, which the Sharks currently don't have. Maybe for some of these players like a Vlasic and a Burns and a Joe Pavelski and, some of the older greats, even like if you want Nabokov or Niemi or whomever you want to kind of put in there, maybe starting a ring of honor for these guys and leaving that jersey retirement for the like upper echelon type of players where, but I can't picture another player wearing number 8 at the same time. So, it'll be curious to see what the Sharks do with Pavelski and how they kind of go to honor him as he, goes through this retirement, or if he wants to come back and play for another season. I'm sure Mike Grier would be happy to have him. But I think with Pavelski, if you want to have him around the organization, like we've seen with Patrick Marleau, who's part of the development staff, Joe Thornton, who's with the team, but we don't really have a title, or much like Joe Thornton, very nebulous with his title and what he does and stuff. And Joe Thornton probably just wants to hang around the boys, and very much welcome to having Joe Thornton around. But if, again, I don't know what Joe Pavelski wants to do. He could be very much, I've given, my entire life to playing hockey. I'm ready to go do something else, whether it's just get away and move off into, retire and just enjoy his family. Very much see that. Or if he wants to stick around, does he want to coach? Does he want to get into front office stuff? Does he want to do TV? What does Joe Pavelski want to do? And I think the way Mike Grier has willingly been willingly bringing back players with open arms, right? And guys he's played for, of course, Pavelski and Thornton, who played with a bajillion, basically anybody who's put on a Shark uniform, except for some of these newer guys at this point. But Pavelski and Mike Grier did play together for a couple seasons. If Pavelski had interest in coming home and coming back to San Jose, and what would his role be? Could they potentially groom him as a Rod Brind'Amour type? So, just a reminder, Rod Brind'Amour played for the Hurricanes for a bajillion seasons from 2000 to 2010. After he retired, he joined the team as working on as director of player development in the 2010 to 2011 season. Then he was an assistant coach from 2011 to 2018 before getting the head coaching gig in 2018, the 2018-2019 season. And we've seen what he's done with this Canes team. So I think it's a lot to ask for a guy, even as great as Joe Pavelski is, we know natural leader. I think it's a lot to ask for him to go from playing to being a head coach right away. But I could see Joe Pavelski being a head coach down the line and getting him in the building. And if it's Marco Sturm, Warsofsky, whoever the Sharks pick as their head coach, and pairing him with Joe Pavelski, who that grinder attitude of, I'm just going to outwork everybody and keep working at my craft until I'm just better at it. Having that type of guy to be a coach, especially with young players, makes a lot of sense to me. I'm speculating wildly here. Who knows what Joe Pavelski wants to do? I'm never talked to the man, but having a guy like Joe Pavelski, who's had to work for everything his whole life, be a coach, sounds good to me. Because I think that mentality and that leadership and that professionalism is going to rub off on a very, very young team. So I don't think Joe Pavelski should be the head coach this year, but if you want to start getting him ready for that role, I would look at the Rod Brind'Amour blueprint of having him be an assistant coach for a couple seasons. And then when he's ready, or you think he can be the guy to lead the team to the next phase, makes a ton of sense to me. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to dig into the 2022 draft class. I know I was supposed to do it today, but Joe Pavelski is retiring, and I just want to talk about Joe Pavelski for 30 minutes because I miss Joe Pavelski. So let's see if Joe Pavelski, what he wants to do, if he wants to come back, hang out with Mike Grier and help make some decisions and stuff like that. I'm cool with that. If you want to start getting him ready to be a potential coach, awesome. If Joe Pavelski wants to just go hang out with his kids and never be seen from again, congratulations, buddy. You've had one hell of a career, and you are, again, one of the greatest players to ever put on a teal jersey. We'll see you at your Hall of Fame announcement / retire, whatever he wants to do. So, that's gonna be it for me. Be back tomorrow. Like I said, 2022 draft class. We'll also continue more draft stuff. We'll continue some more free agency stuff. It's fun to talk about free agents again. And then, make sure you follow wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.